about what needs to be done. We have had an opportunity over the last 4 or 5 days to meet with representatives of the World Bank here, to meet with the Chief Minister Patel of Gujarat, to meet with his other ministers, to meet with AID and with the Asian Development Bank, and with NGOs, and in a series of meetings as we try to coordinate an effort to provide more resources. I think we've gotten a very good understanding of what we can do to be of assistance, and when we return, we shall do so. Let me say also that it was a great honor for me to have an opportunity in a bipartisan way to be part of President Clinton's visit here last year. Let me say as a Republican that one of the things we have tried to do in the India caucus, which I co-chair with Mr. McDermott, is to forge that relationship in a bipartisan way as we recruit more and more members of the United States Congress and educate them about issues. Good morning, how that trip was received. Let me say that the Prime Minister's trip to the United States was received in exactly the same vein, as we had an opportunity in the United States Congress for the Senate and the House to hear the words of the Prime Minister. I think that also equally helped build a momentum for a closer relationship between these two great democracies. And I thought tonight I'd speak for a bit about the future of that U.S.-India relationship and about the role of the Congressional Caucus on India. And I thought I might start by some observations made by Secretary of State Powell during his confirmation hearings, which we all watched in the United States, and share some of his thoughts that were brought up during his confirmation as Secretary of State. I don't think the United States could have found a better man to be Secretary of State. I've worked with him in the past. Besides serving on the Asia subcommittee as Vice Chairman, I chair the Africa subcommittee. And so I've traveled with him in Africa in the past and worked with him. And I must tell you that I was very encouraged when I heard him during his confirmation hearing describe India as a powerful country, one we should engage more broadly with. He went on to say, India is a country that should grow more and be more focused in our foreign policy lens. We are not focusing on India and foreign policy. He said, we need to work harder. We need to work more consistently with India. There is no doubt in my mind that the new Secretary of State appreciates the political and the economic and strategic importance of India, and that he'll build on the positive that has been established by the Clinton administration, and we should recognize those positives. And those positives include unprecedented economic, political, and technological links with India. President Clinton deserves credit for the focus he brought to the U.S.-India relationship, capped by his visit here. And President Clinton managed to put a lot behind us. His visit helped lead Indians to think more favorably towards America than ever before, though the real focus for that change in perspective, I think, is partly due to the Indo-American community in the United States. And let me say that the Indian-American Friendship Council plays one of the key roles in this. The best ambassadors are the Indo-Americans that we work with day to day, that we have grown to know. I have a business background in my past. So many of us in the business community know so many Indo-Americans. My wife, by the way, is in the hotel business. She was an executive at Marriott. You can imagine how many people she knows, especially in the state of Gujarat, in the United States. And as we grow to know that Indo-American community that is 1.5 million strong, in our foreign policy in the future, however, concerning the prior administration, has been our emphasis and distorted view of China. President Clinton, as most of you know, hailed China as a strategic partner, which he said played a positive role in South Asia. Secretary Powell, at his confirmation hearing, countered rather intentionally by stating a strategic partner China is not. He went on to say that China is a competitor and a potential regional rival. Now, I think that President Bush had it right when he said China is not our strategic partner, it is a strategic competitor. And the Secretary of State in his confirmation hearings basically is stating what I think to many of us is the obvious. Now, I think we need to be clear, as Secretary Powell noted, China is not an enemy, and we shouldn't treat China as an enemy. Neither should the United States nor India treat China in that way. But in point of fact, neither is it a strategic partner for the United States. And if the United States is looking long-term at building relationships, I just would make the observation that the U.S. put an awful lot of effort into, in the past administration, our relationship with China. I think the United States should put an effort foremost in building a stronger relationship with democratic nations around the world that respect the values that underlie, that are the foundation that will bring, for our future, greater peace, greater stability around the world, greater prosperity for the people of the world. Now, there are several things that America can do to help build this relationship with India. And here's a couple from my view. And the first is to lift sanctions. I thought Secretary Powell had it very right on the sanctions issue when he said that the U.S. has too many embargoes against too many countries, and he pledged to review all of them, including sanctions on India. And he said every sanction should have a sunset clause at the end of which it should automatically expire unless renewed. And I sponsored sanctions reform legislation last Congress that would do just that would sunset sanctions. Congress needs to work more closely with the new administration because, you know, as a nation, the United States has become sanctions happy. In most situations, engagement is a better policy than isolation. And that's certainly the case here. And so our first priority in the India caucus for this new year will be the elimination of all sanctions. Two, we need to give India the respect that it deserves as a major power. That includes paying it continued diplomatic attention at the highest levels. It's my hope that President Bush would visit India soon, perhaps after he participates in November's APEC meeting. It also means getting in place a top-notch Assistant Secretary of State for South Asia and a top-notch ambassador to India to continue the good work of Ambassador Celeste here as he departs Delhi. There are several things that America and India can do together to build their relationship. And here's a couple of thoughts I have on that. One, we should work towards greater defense cooperation. I had the honor, by the way, during the International Fleet Review, to be a part of that celebration and later to go on the USS warship, the cruiser Calkins. And let me say that I thought that that fleet review was done in the most magnificent and effective way. And, you know, I think that we should be focused more on defense cooperation. And I have long said that India lives in a rough neighborhood. I just finished reading Dragon Strike, written by a BBC correspondent, Humphrey Hawksley. And this book is called A Must-Read for All Indians by Indian Defense Minister Fernandez. And it's a frightening account of conflict spiraling out of control in South Asia. The U.S. has a strategic interest in India's security, in seeing that a major conflict never breaks out. And we should begin to rebuild the defense cooperation that was ended in 1998. Two, I think we should focus on Pakistan. America and certainly India would be losers if Pakistan implodes. India would be seriously threatened if it had another Afghanistan-type situation on its borders. The U.S. and India must work ever closer in fighting terrorism, and we need to do even more. Pakistan is a very troubled country, and we, the U.S. and India, must challenge each other to see how Pakistan's fundamental ills can be treated. There are many Pakistanis, too, I would say the great majority, who don't want to see their country slip into the type of radicalism that we see as we look to Afghanistan. I don't think mothers want their daughters to be raised in a situation like we see today in Afghanistan. And the threat is real. And while I don't have all the answers, I do know that together we need to be more focused on doing what we can do to see that Pakistan does not slip into the abyss. Let me speak for a minute on common values. The relationship between the U.S. and India has so much promise because of common security and common economic interests. There's also the very important bond of values between the world's oldest and the world's largest democracies. But of course, both countries must be ever vigilant in guarding these values. President Bush spoke stirring words about inclusion during his inauguration. I believe that that is a creed he will govern. And let me say this about values. In my view, China is not America's strategic partner, largely because it doesn't strive to honor democratic values. India does. It's common values that bring the U.S.-India relationship great strength. Now, in closing, let me speak for a minute about the India caucus and some of our priorities. One I already spoke to, and that is the immediate elimination of sanctions against India. Two is to accelerate the economic partnership between India and the United States. The U.S. is the world's largest economy. India has one of the world's fastest growing economies. Although trade between the two countries has been growing, it's still at a low level. And we need to boost trade, and I intend to start the process of looking at a trade pact between the two countries. Congressman Jim McDermott and I have sat down and begun to focus on that issue. We're still at the early stage. And I do think, though, that our commercial relationship has so much potential that it would be irresponsible if we did not begin this process of sitting down now, as we've been doing over the last few days, with our counterparts in India and look at the possibility of an India-U.S. trade pact. Two, I think we need to ensure a better understanding of shared concerns, especially terrorism. And third, our priority should be to encourage greater activity in the India caucus. Because in such a short period of time, we've been able to build that caucus from several dozen members to, as you heard today, 124. And I look forward to the day, hopefully, when we have a majority of the members of the United States Congress as part of the India caucus. That would be 218. That should be our